What is up, guys? Raymaster Flex here, and I want to briefly touch on Raw and SmackDown Live this week. SmackDown just went off. Raw was last night. Um, this was the first time it's been said that Paul Heyman and uh, and Eric Bischoff are taking executive roles on the main shows. Eric dealing with SmackDown Live. Paul dealing with Raw. Now, of course, they said that they really won't take control until after Extreme Rules. But I just want to touch on a few things that just you could kind of tell, especially with last night on Raw, that was like Paul type of influence. Now, tonight on SmackDown, you could tell that Eric didn't necessarily run SmackDown, have any sort of influence on SmackDown, but there were a lot of decent things that happened on SmackDown tonight as well. I would say both days, tonight and yesterday, were two decent shows. There were some things that were repetitive that we've seen more than multiple times that they're just going to keep doing, and hopefully after Extremes they put an end to it. So one of the things I want to touch on is on Raw, the explosion between Bobby Lashley and Braun Strowman. I mean, my goodness, man, they really made you believe it was real, especially and they really made you believe it was real, especially with the way how the commentators were talking. They were talking as if this was an actual real event that transpired when Braun Strowman went against Bobby Lashley in the Falls Count Anywhere and hit him through the fireworks and it exploded. I mean, that scared me. I mean, I for one was convinced that this was actually like in a real angle. I mean, just because of the way the fireworks look, and I've seen superstars who have actually been exploded by fireworks, and it wasn't like scripted to happen or anything like that. I've seen it happen to Jeff Hardy when he made an entrance sometime in 2009. I've seen it happen to The Undertaker when he was coming out at the Elimination Chamber 2010, where the fireworks got near him, and they actually, I think they fired the person who was in charge of pyros and fireworks during the time that happened, where it nearly gave him a second or third degree burn. So I mean, I've seen stuff like that happening. I mean, the fact that we don't even see pyro anymore and the way they exploded, and then the fact that Corey Graves shouted out "Holy shit," which is like something that they would do in a non-PG environment. But we've seen plenty of times in this era where they've pointed out words like that. But what was more surprising was that it was uncensored. It just seems like the way that they did it and the way that they got you invested, you could tell that even if Paul didn't necessarily fully have control, and even if he is not going to fully have control until after Extreme Rules, you could tell that the Paul Heyman influence really played a huge factor in that. For once we've seen something. I mean, something similar like this happened 2013 when Ryback went against John Cena at Extreme Rules. Something very similar to this happened, but I don't think it. But it wasn't nearly as as crazy as this was. I mean, you could literally just see the fireworks just exploding and how crazy this looked when this happened. So that definitely was something to take a look at. I mean, my goodness, that was crazy. Oh man, even just looking at it, it just looked really disturbing, to see something like that. But to know that they did a good job with how they did it, because they really had me convinced that the way that it looked and just the way that uh commentators were speaking, they really had me thinking, this was a real angle, because it's like, man, they really were talking as if this was something real. And, Paul Heyman, the fact that he ran ECW and the many things he did with Extreme Championship Wrestling, uh, it just tells you that he has the tools and the skill to run a good Raw. And I think this is really a step to a new direction. I mean, we've seen some things uh, repetitive. I mean, of course, you still got and the Alexa and Nikki Cross storyline with Bailey going on across both brands, where Nikki Cross actually ended up beating Carmella in the match on Raw. Carmella beat Alexa first, and then Nikki Cross ended up beating Carmella on Raw right after Alexa had lost to her, and Alexa started putting her hands up like, she really did something. And then, of course, that on SmackDown, Alexa was so happy of Nikki using her as a bidding, and Um, she had her actually host the Moment of Bliss, which on Raw, Alexa was with her, and that's when Carmella interrupted. But on SmackDown, this time Alexa was not with Nikki. She ran herself, and that's when Bayley tried to basically tell her, why doesn't she have a title shot instead of Alexa? Why is Alexa getting a rematch when Nikki was the one who clearly pinned, you know, was the one who clearly pinned Bayley on SmackDown last week. So that just caused tension for Nikki to go off and set up a match against her, which she didn't win. And I mean, it's just certain things. The 24/7 title, both times, nothing really happened with it tonight, but yesterday it was really hilarious with how they did it. Drake Maverick, his wife told him it's either the 24/7 title or it's me. And then he tried to say, of course I choose you. I try to take her to the little honeymoon. And R-Truth basically mocks him and just goes all around him to get him to try to get him under his skin to try to make him face out the 24/7 title when they had a No Way Jose match, which we hadn't seen him in ages. He was going to actually go off and face Cesaro, but the match never actually happened because out of nowhere, once R-Truth wore disguise, messing with the father line, everybody from the 24/7 title started facing him around, and then he ran. Then backstage, Drake Maverick had them, won the title back, took it with his wife, and then said we go on our honeymoon 24 hours. So that was really funny right there. On SmackDown tonight, our Truth didn't want the announcer to replay the footage and said he was going to get back his European 24/7 championship or whatever he calls it. Which is really funny. I mean, our Truth has really been doing a heck of a job. With this 24/7 team, him and Drake Maverick have really made this extremely funny. A title that no one, and even some people still don't care about it, but a title that no one really gave much about, never really gave a chance to the first person to seen back in May, and already, it's just had so much huge significance with what they've done with it. They've made it a comedy act, but it's been very refreshing with how they've been doing it. And Kevin, this Drake Maverick and R Truth thing is just a lot of fun, especially with how they're going. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see if R Truth is going to end up pinning Drake Maverick at his honeymoon. I feel like that's going to be the next angle they try to go for, considering Drake Maverick just got pinned at his wedding. Now, a lot of the stuff, some of the stuff they did this with the Hardcore Championship, but I think some of the stuff was new ideas. Like, I don't think you've ever seen, I don't think with the Hardcore title anybody was ever pinned at their wedding. I mean, there was a lot of things that Hardcore Holly and Crash did when they were the Hardcore champions. Of course, the famous thing I remember with the Hardcore title when it was 24/7, which of course Crash was the one who came up with that rule in the first place. One thing I remember specifically was WrestleMania 18, where there was like 4 or 5 title changes in the same night. First, you had Maven as champion opening up the show when he went against Goldust. I think Spike came out and won the title from them. Then Spike ended up losing it to the Hurricane, and then the Hurricane ended up losing it to Molly Holly. Molly Holly ended up losing it to Christian. Christian ended up losing it back to Maven, and Maven drove out and left the night with his title that he had at the beginning of the night. So, I mean, it was just about as funny angles as with the Hardwood Championship, but so to some degree, I would say that this one right here, the 24/7 title, which is a replica of it. I would say there's certain angles they've done that we've never seen before. So there you go with that. Then you have, I'm not going to touch on everything on both shows. Of course, tonight, I mean, you had the New Day go against the War Raiders, and, and Samoa Joe. This was the first time that we saw Kofi Kingston pass out, and ever since he's been WWE champion, where he's actually lost and actually passed out. It was on Raw. He's not even a Raw guy, but he constantly has him coming on the wild card, which is really great. I hope after this feud with Joe, they really stop doing that because it defeats the purpose of him being a SmackDown guy. Every time he has a title match, he's going against people from Raw. You know, there you go with that. Joe Man tap out. That was really surprising. You had the Mike Cornell's and Maria thing that happened with Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins. That was pretty crazy, pretty intense. You could tell that was another thing. There was probably some Paul Heyman influence there. Um, Not going to really say much about that. Here on SmackDown, you had Big E go against Daniel Bryan, which Daniel Bryan won with the help of Aaron Roman. Um, then we later on, start off the show actually with Kevin. I mean, let's talk about this. So you have the Shane McMahon, Drew McIntyre. They showed up on both shows. First, the Undertaker came out on Raw, told them they were wrestling peace. Then they showed up tonight on SmackDown on Kevin Owens' show. Kevin Owens seemed as if he was turning a tweener. So there's two turns this week that really, it was really kind of strange to me. Well, one of them I seen it coming, but the other one, uh, I don't know if you would consider this a turn or a tweener. So the first one we got AJ Styles, who turned heel on Ricochet. It was built up throughout the night where the Bullet Club, Carnes and Luke Gallows was trying to hype him up, and they were first trying to tell Ricochet that AJ had said some things, and then they tried to manipulate AJ and tell him that Ricochet had said some things behind his back. And before that even happened, they were telling him, what happened to the real AJ Styles, because he told them, you guys did good last week, but you lost to the War Raiders. You went against them last Viking Raiders. You went against them last week. And, have you been in the ring? You guys are big. And, they just, it was kind of like a tease. And the way that they did it, a lot of people said this is exactly like how he turned on John Cena, how he turned heel when he was in the ring with John Cena. And it basically was. I mean, the same thing happened. They came out, uh, and he basically started beating him up the same way how he beat up John Cena. The only difference I'll say with this one was when he beat up John Cena, he didn't actually grab Cena from the top rope and hit him with a style clash. That was the only difference. Is that he actually got Ricochet and with a style clash. It was kind of, uh, it was almost like you could just see this coming from a mile away, especially with how long it took. As soon as Carl Anderson and Gallo came out, you got to tell that that AJ was going to turn heel, even though it was something that had really been rumored for a while. Even when he was feuding with Seth Rollins, it seemed like when they were about to have their match and Money in the Bank, it seemed like he was going to turn heel then, but it didn't happen. All of a sudden, he turns heel for a mid card championship with Ricochet. I guess this is going to set up a match between the two Extreme Rules once again. And it's going to be interesting to see how long this lasts, considering that Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows are not resigning with WWE. So the fact that they got them as the club again, I can only hope to wonder how long this is actually going to be before they split up once again. Because the first time they were together, AJ got moved to SmackDown while they stayed on Raw. They eventually won the Raw Tag Team titles, and from there they just moved to SmackDown, and they didn't really succeed. So, and then eventually they barely put them on a house show. And that's one of the reasons why they want to leave the company. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with them, uh, as far as them being with AJ Styles. It's gonna be interesting to see, what actually happens, how long this faction is gonna last this time around. Considering the last time they were together at the Bullet Club, they didn't really last together that long because, like I said, AJ eventually moved to SmackDown and they stayed on Raw. So there you go with that. Something that was kind of predictable, especially with the way that it turned out. But at the end of it, man, it definitely was something refreshing. I mean, but mostly you got to give him credit here because I mean, with this Raw, you had certain things that were repetitive. I mean, you had the couple thing with Becky and Seth Rollins with Mike Kanellis and Maria. And, Mike actually tapped out to Becky once Maria tried to say she was pregnant. And they, tell Mike basically, you're not man enough to get me pregnant and say, seems like, Becky's the man. Maybe I can get her to impregnate me, which is really crazy to hear something like that. Typically, again, it seems like something Paul would have came up with, which is why when they did show Paul, he was talking about Brock, and then the Street Profits was backstage. It just seemed like, which I don't even know why they won the main roster so early. They just won the tag team titles, the NXT tag team titles, NXT Takeover 25. So I'm not even sure why they're in the main roster this quickly. But I mean, I will say there were certain things that the Seth thing, the thing with the Seth thing. I mean, the only good thing that came out of it was Mike was on Raw for once. We hadn't seen him on Raw in ages. He was on 205 Live. They actually showcased him on Raw, which was something different. No way Jose was on Raw, which was something different. He didn't even have a match. Uh, Cesaro attacked him after all that chaos. You know, for once, the Viking Raiders have yet to actually lose, which I figured they weren't. At first, it was a match with them and the New Day. Then it turned to a six-man tag, which I kind of had a feeling something like that was going to happen. Now, I will say this. Now, and then, of course, you had the repeat of The Miz and Elias in the 2 out of 3 falls. Thank God they did not do that this week. I mean, on SmackDown, on Raw, that was the last time we had the 2 out of 3 falls when it was The Miz and Elias, in which The Miz won the first fall and Elias won the second fall and The Miz won the third fall. Another repetition of something that is dragged way too long with this. I know they're doing it because of the ad breaks, but I'm glad that they didn't continue that on SmackDown this week. Actually, I was pretty surprised because today we didn't see any 2 out of 3 falls matches with the fact of Vince not wanting wrestling to continue to average. We just saw regular matches, which really was surprising me. So I think that this change of direction, it's not the best, but you can definitely tell that it's improved. Raw did a decent job with how how they played out this yesterday. There were certain things that were repetitive, like I said, the Miz and Elias, the continuation of the Miz with Shane, which seems like it's never going to end. The stuff with Drew McIntyre and Shane. It's even rumored that the Undertaker's supposed to be facing Drew at SummerSlam. I don't know why. Uh, Roman Reigns. We didn't see Roman Reigns on Raw or SmackDown this week, so I don't know what that was all about. It's kind of weird that he didn't show up on Raw or SmackDown. SmackDown guy, and it seems like he's never on SmackDown nowadays. And then he wasn't even on Raw either. So I would have thought if he wasn't going to be on Raw, he would have at least showed up on SmackDown. But we didn't see him on SmackDown either. We just saw Drew and Shane get interviewed by Kevin Owens, in which, like I said, Kevin Owens, and I'm gonna just touch on this. Kevin Owens, I don't know if at this point Kevin is what you would call a tweener, or if he just turned babyface again. If he did turn babyface again, it kind of defeats the purpose of turning him heel in the first place. Because I mean, the way he was speaking to, the way he was speaking to Shane and Drew on the Kevin Owens show tonight, it seemed as if he had turned back babyface, especially when he said, how does it feel? So Shane, basically, how does it feel to have come back for the first time in over 7 years or so, or in years in 2016, and then lose to the Undertaker in the Hell in a Cell match at WrestleMania when he told him to do your job, when Shane told him to do your job and just breathe the card. He tried to basically get under Shane's skin and say, I know that you guys are afraid of the Undertaker. And he tried to show the footage of them backing away and stepping out of the ring on Raw. That was another thing. It was like two recaps from Raw. Actually three recaps throughout the night. And Shane was saying he's not afraid of the Undertaker. Drew saying he's not afraid of the Undertaker. Said he's the best in the world and all that. Had Craig Hamilton say his name best in the world since Kevin Owens didn't want to say it enthusiastically when he interviewed him. And I just find that funny because even when it's funny to me how Kevin, even with Shane as a heel now, Kevin still basically talks to Shane in the same manner that he did when Shane was a babyface. I always find it funny when even when guys switch roles and character, they still don't get along. I mean, when the Miz turned babyface, he still didn't get along with Daniel, and Daniel turned when the Miz turned babyface. Daniel was heel, and he didn't get along with Daniel anymore. Even when they were both heels before the Miz was officially a babyface, because I would say I can't really say if it's particularly when the Miz exactly would be considered a babyface, but it basically was because of him hyping up Shane McMahon at the World Cup after the World Cup because of the fact that Shane fought because he got hurt. Um, I don't know, man. I just find that funny. Like Kevin, even now, like you know, the way he was talking, it seemed as if he's either a tweener now uh, or he's just a baby face again. Because you had Dolph Ziggler come out and told him, I don't want to hear it. Should have been you. It should have been you 8 years ago, and it still wasn't you. Like and told him, who should get a title opportunity between them two. And he was like, Shane was like, neither of you guys can fight for the uh, tag team championship opportunity if you win later on the night, basically with Heavy Machinery, which of course they didn't win because Dolph Ziggler inadvertently super kicked Kevin Owens during the match. They had a well executed plan and they still lost. And then end off the show, Kevin Owens stuttered. Dolph Ziggler said, "This is my show. This is my show. This is my show. This is Kevin Owens' show. This is my show." So again, I we saw a lot of things. We saw Stop Ali do another promo. I don't know, or now they go by Ali. I don't know exactly when he's supposed to come back, but he hasn't been seen on SmackDown in a minute. Actually, I can't even think of the last time. I think the last time he was on SmackDown was after Money in the Bank when he went against Andrade. Then it might have been another time after that. But ever since then, I mean, he has not been seen on SmackDown. He's just been doing all these promos that they continuously keep showing. We saw Aleister Black say that someone's finally going to knock on his door at Extreme Rules. Uh, when he looked outside, no one was there, but at Extreme Rules, someone's going to pick a fight with him. And, I'm pretty interested to see who this person is going to be. Rumor has it might be Cesaro, but I really want to see, who this person is going to be. Because he's been doing this stuff for weeks. And this was actually the first time uh, that he actually mentioned a time where he's going to finally get back in the ring. Basically, Aleister Black has not wrestled on SmackDown ever since they lost, ever since they lost. at WrestleMania to the Usos. Him and Ricochet lost to the Usos. Rusev and Shinsuke and Sheamus and Cesaro the Bar for the SmackDown Tag Team titles. That was like after that, it just seemed like they just started having once they moved Alistair to SmackDown and put Ricochet on Raw. Once they did the Superstar Shakeup, it just seems like he has not had a match ever since. It's been a long time since Alistair even been in the ring. So only interested to see who that turns out to be. I mean, but you can see that the change is happening. And no matter what they do, there are always going to be people who's always going to complain about WWE. But like I said, for me, I'm not going to let them down because I've always believed that they can get better. Um, it's a frustrating time, but I'm not going to let them down. I believe they can get better. Um, you know, and it's crazy because again, and then they had this weird excitement tonight where Shelton Benjamin, they actually who do you think is going to win the WWE Championship match? He was like, I don't know, he was looking as if the other guys, like, people was talking to him, he had voices in his head. I don't know what the illusion was, but yeah, that going on. The only thing I would say for SmackDown that killed me, there was no Finn Balor. We seen him last week with Shinsuke pop up. There was no Finn Balor, um, which was kind of weird. Um, you know, the Fire Funhouse. They say that this like eventually Bray's going to show up. So I don't know what's going on with that. It's just certain little things, but they are starting to showcase certain guys that we don't really see. Like tonight, we saw Apollo Crews finally actually have a match with Andrade, which Andrade won. We saw Ember Moon against Mandy Rose after last week she lost to Sandra Deville. She actually beat Mandy Rose tonight. Uh, it just, you know, I would say last night on Raw wasn't the best, but it definitely showed some improvements. Tonight on SmackDown wasn't the best either, but you definitely seen a lot of improvement with the shows, especially with how the booking was. You could just tell there was a slight difference. The only thing was is that they opened up the show with Shane and Drew when Kevin Owens had them. When Kevin Owens showed that did not happen on Raw. They actually opened up the show with Bobby and Braun, which is why that's the only thing to open up the show with promos. They've been doing that for years now, though, but a lot of times it's a lot better when you just open up the show and just have a straight up match. I don't know if it's because Vince has this thing where he doesn't want SmackDown to overtop Raw. But we'll see what happens more so after next week. Next week is going to be the go home show for Extreme Rules on both shows. Also, you had this great face off between Samoa Joe and Kofi Kingston tonight that I really enjoyed. Kofi Kingston wasn't intimidated by Samoa Joe's words. Basically, Joe tried to tell him to shake his hand. He stuck his middle finger out. Anyone can turn on paradise. That was something interesting right there. You know, you can see the direction is changing with these shows, but it won't fully change until after Extreme Rules. I'm sure that even with the Extreme Rules situation, it's still going to be probably Vince with most of the booking for that show. But I don't know, man. But I will say both shows did a good job this week, and I wanted to touch on both shows because I haven't been very consistent with my WWE videos, but that's about to change, especially given that I only got a month before I still go back to college again for my next semester. So I'm going to be trying to upload a little bit more wrestling videos between now and then before I'm not able to really do it at all. So there you go with that. I may do a review. I mean, not a review, a prediction on Extreme Rules. If not, probably do a review on that pay per view. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. Just wanted to go over Raw and SmackDown real quick say what I thought about them. Sign over at Master Flex. I'll see you guys another day. Peace.